Okay, so yeah, we can hop right in here. So welcome back to the Copilot in 30. Today we're talking about agents in Microsoft 365. This is session 5, and it's the next part of the series. I think we're going to hang out here for a little while, and this will be kind of like that foundational session where we're going to learn, what an agent is and that kind of stuff. And then I'm hoping over the next few, like it'll be like laptops open, working sessions, and we'll build some agents and that kind of thing. Up to this point, we've mostly been focused on using Copilot Chat and notebooks and that kind of stuff, but using them as like an individual assistant, and really great place to start. But eventually, with our work, patterns start to show up, and I realize we're not just asking Copilot random questions anymore. We're asking them the same kind of help, with the same kind of instructions, referencing the same documents, and we're expecting the same kind of output. And so this is where the agents really start to come in. So today's not like a deep technical session. We'll talk a little bit about building, but not a whole lot. We're going to spend the time. What we want at the end of the session is to be able to look at a real piece of work in our business and decide, should this stay in Copilot Chat? Should this become an agent, or should we be looking at Copilot Studio? That's the whole goal. And then we're going to take the next few sessions and build with what we've been learning really since the beginning, not just from today. Okay. Now, let's start with why agents exist. Like I said before, most teams start with Copilot or AI in general in a very practical way. We ask it to draft email, summarize a meeting, review proposals, prepare for a call. And that's useful, super, super valuable. But after a while, we start to notice the repeated work. As an example, and this is going to be something that we look at all day today, but every time you prepare for a client onboarding meeting, you may need the same kinds of things. Proposals summarized, missing information identified, risks flagged, internal next steps, and maybe checklists created, that kind of stuff. At first, regular Copilot's enough, but then we ask for help and we keep moving with that help. But if we're doing the same work every week or multiple times a week, it starts to get inefficient to keep explaining the same thing over and over again. So the question changes from, can Copilot help me with this, to should the work be packaged so it can be repeated more consistently and efficiently? So that is the real value of agents. Obviously not about replacing people. It's not about building some giant automation on day one. The value is much more simple than that. Agents reduce repeated explaining, they reduce repeated searching, and most importantly, in my eyes, is they reduce the inconsistent outputs. And so they help the team follow the same process more reliably. And so Copilot is great when the work is different every time, but agents are useful when the work follows a pattern. Alrighty, so for the rest of today, we're going to be using one business example. This is a fictional client, but the scenario is very realistic for us and hopefully the same for you. The client is called Harbour Ridge Mechanical. And just to set the stage a little bit, they had just signed a proposal. They're being onboarded as a service level agreement client, and now the onboarding needs to begin. The team has a few different pieces of information available. We have like a signed proposal. We've got discovery call notes, sales handoff notes. We have an onboarding standard operating procedure, obviously. And we also have email templates that are associated with that onboarding SOP. So there's enough information to start, but there's probably a little bit of information that we're missing. It might be that we don't have the billing contact. We're missing some like credit information. We don't have the final user list. Maybe the intake form isn't done, and we're not 100% sure on the different locations. So there's different pieces of the puzzle that we don't know yet. Okay, so every organization has some kind of version of this. It might not be a project onboarding. It might be a client onboarding. It might be a project kickoff. It could be a vendor intake, a service request triage if you're in a service business, meeting preparation, or the one that we hear about all the time with our clients is like a consistent employee onboarding experience. But the pattern remains the same. A process starts, there's documents, missing details, handoffs, risks, and someone needs to prepare that next step. And today we're going to look at the Harbour Ridge Mechanical in 3 different lenses. The first just in regular Copilot Chat, the second with the Agent Builder, and the third with Copilot Studio. So same business problem, just different maturity level. Sorry, 1 second.
Sounds like his kiddo popped in.
It was an army of kids. Sorry about that.
All good.
Where was I? Yeah. So what is an agent? So let's define what this looks like. An agent is a co-pilot that is designed for a specific job, and the key word here is specific. A good agent is not broad. It doesn't try to help with everything. A good agent has a clear purpose. As an example, it's an HR policy helper. It's a proposal review assistant. It's a client onboarding assistant, project kickoff assistant, or service desk triage helper. Those are good because the job is extremely clear. A weak agent sounds more like our operational agent or our sales agent or projects agent or HR agent. They sound useful and kind of sexy to have like an operations agent, but they're usually too vague. So a good agent needs 4 things. First, they need purpose. So what does that job perform? The second is instructions. How should it be behaving? The third is knowledge. What information should it be using? What sites should it be referencing? Documents should it be referencing? And then also, the boundaries. What should it never be doing? Because an agent is not just what it can do, it should also be what it shouldn't do. It should also be very defined what it shouldn't be doing. Now, if you can't describe your agent's job in 1 sentence, the agent is likely too broad. Just as an example that we're looking at here, like as a good example, it's the onboarding assistant helps prepare new client onboarding by reviewing the proposal, identifying missing information, and drafting next steps. That's super clear. And scope, like a lot of things in life, scope is not a limitation. Scope is what makes the agent useful and also safe to use. All right, this is the main decision framework for today. When we're looking at building an agent, before we even talk about what Microsoft product, AI product we're going to be using, we start with the actual task. And the simplest question is first, do I need help once? Like, is this something that I'm only going to ask AI to do for me just the one time? If that's the case, then it's going to be Copilot Chat. We don't need to build anything. That would be way over engineering it, obviously. So if I need to draft 1 email, summarize a meeting, prepare for a call, I'm just going to use Copilot Chat every time. The next question that's going to help us decide if it's going to be Agent Builder or Copilot Studio is, does the work repeat? So Agent Builder is useful when the same type of work keeps happening. Same instructions, same knowledge, same source material, same output format, same process. This is when it starts to make sense to package this into a reusable agent. And then the next question we ask ourselves is, does the agent need actions, workflows, approvals, or system integration? If yes, then we can look at Copilot Studio. That's when the agents start moving beyond preparing work and coordinating work. Just as an example, we can create a task, notify a team member, route missing information, request approval, connect to another system, or track status. So the short version here is Copilot helps me do the work, Agent Builder helps me repeat the work, and Copilot Studio helps the organization scale or coordinate the work. The mistake is starting with the product. People often ask, and as do I, should I be starting with Copilot Studio? And that's really the wrong first question. It should be, what job are we trying to solve? Once that job is clear, then we can start the tool choice just becomes much easier to decide. So start with the work, then choose the tool. Now, further to that point, there's Like a lot of people, and again, I'm probably like the worst offender here. I really get ahead of myself. When people first hear about agents, they often head straight to automation. So can it update my CRM? Can it change my billing, create reports, approve invoices, modify permissions? And those might be great tasks eventually, but that's not where I would start. I would start with knowledge work. So knowledge work means the agents helps answer, summarize, review, draft, and prepare. Now, for the Harbour Ridge example, which we're going to be getting into a little bit more here, knowledge work might be, summarizing the proposal, identifying missing onboarding details, drafting the kickoff email, creating an internal checklist, or flag risks before the handoff. Now, super useful, and it's lower risk because we always have a person reviewing that output. They're always going to be sending the emails or, coordinating with the team, anything like that. Now, the next level after that knowledge work is coordination. And that means the agent may notify someone, it might assign a task, route information, create a planner task, or even request approval. So, even more useful, but the risk does go up. But then the highest risk level is the system action. That's where an agent might update a CRM, change billing details, modify permissions, submit records, or commit to something externally. At that point, we really need to be taking a look at governance, who can use it, what can it access, what actions are allowed, who owns the process. So the more an agent can change, the more governance it needs. So we start with preparation before the automation. And once people really trust the agent with preparation, we can decide whether it should move into coordination or action later. And just to kind of sum up those last two slides, Agent Builder is best when you want a focused assistant that can use your documents, your SOPs, and your templates to help you work more consistently. And Copilot is best when you want the agent to start taking action in your process. Okay, so the Agent Builder client onboarding could be the client onboarding assistant that helps your onboarding SOP, templates, handoff notes. Strong Agent Builder use case, which I'm going to show you what it looks like. But Copilot Studio is different because it's more of an operational agent. So it can create tasks, notify the onboarding lead, it can email the client, route missing information, and track status. But the goal here is not to use the most advanced tool every time, it's to use the smallest tool that can safely solve the problem. Alrighty, now I'm going to show what this looks like here. We're just going to start with Copilot Chat, and the scenario is the Harbour Ridge Mechanical. So the proposal has been signed, and we need to prepare onboarding. At this stage, I'm not building anything. We don't have any agents set up. I'm just asking Copilot for help with the work in front of me. So summarize, I should put this as quick response. Summarize the Harbour Ridge onboarding package and identify missing information before kickoff. Now, it's still super helpful here. It summarizes the package. It can pull out key details. It can identify gaps. It gives me a really great starting point. This is exactly the kind of thing that Copilot is good at. Okay, now I will hop into another prompt here. So draft a kickoff email to the client using available onboarding information. Keep it clear, professional, and action-oriented. Again, useful. I get a draft. I can edit it, send it, pop it over into Outlook. But now I want to just quickly pause and point out the limitation. I had to explain the task, and I'm probably going to explain it different each time. I had to point Copilot to the right information. I had to tell it what I wanted. I had to give it the tone, ask it to look at a checklist. I have to ask it to do all these different kinds of things. I have to give context each time I have a request for it. And so that's okay if it's one client, but if I do this every week, it gets repetitive. And if multiple people on the team do this, then I guarantee you we're all going to be doing it a little bit differently. And that creates like an operational gap where we're not going to look consistent and everything's going to be a little bit off. So Copilot is fast and flexible, but the process still lives in my head or the user's head. And so, at the expense of repeating myself, the takeaway here is that, we use Copilot when it's a one-off task because it is excellent for exploration. But if the process repeats, we should start to consider whether it belongs as an agent. And so I just want to kind of hit pause here. Like, is there any tasks that kind of people are thinking of that are perhaps like repeatable, that could be like a good candidate? This is just in your regular kind of work.
I've been thinking about it. Something I'm not sure it totally fits here, but we are close to introducing a new piece of software. So there's going to be some level of onboarding and training involved, and potentially like people having questions about it. And I've been thinking about, I don't know, using Copilot for something in there. But yeah, I'm not sure if it's like an agent or if you guys have any tips.
Yeah, that could be a great idea for sure. Yeah. Now the one thing for that is, depending on how you build it, everybody would need a Copilot license.
Right.
So
So that
agent
wouldn't.
builder.
I guess not everyone would have a license, so I guess that wouldn't be as useful.
You could build it with Copilot Studio, but it's still a great example. It's still a great example, and we can kind of chat about that afterwards. How we could roll it out to everybody without licenses, but then there's a pay-as-you-go model with it. But still a really great option. Yeah. Okay. Anybody else? Any other thoughts there? Any other repeatable tasks?
What I thought from my perspective, DJ, when I heard you talking about it, was I do social media posting once a week. I'd like to ramp that up to 2 times a week, maybe even 3. So I'm thinking, right, repetitive, same structure, same tone of our brand. So I'm thinking an agent would probably be a good use case for that, because that's very repeatable.
Big time. Yes. Yeah. I had a similar thought as well with this was, when I'm posting to YouTube and putting it in an email afterwards and summarizing it, like these different webinars and that kind of thing. So very similar to that as well. Yeah, it's a great idea. Okay. All right. So we'll move on here to what the agent actually looks like. So instead of asking Copilot from scratch each time, we create a client onboarding assistant. And this is where the agent builder really starts to fit here. The agent has a specific job. It's to help us with help prepare for onboarding. Now, just to give you a little bit of a heads up as to where it is, you can find it right in here under agents, and we can create our own agent right here. We're going to get into this in much more depth next session, but we can configure our agent, we give it the instructions, give it the source documents, and then we can have it create different things for us. So that's where the agent builder is. But when we pop back over to agents, we can see that I built this Harbour Ridge onboarding agent a couple days ago, and now it knows about our client onboarding. It knows our different email templates, our sales handoff process. It has the context to this entire thing. And so let's try the same kind of work as we had just done with Copilot Chat. So all we're asking is sorry, I keep on forgetting to put a quick response. And so now, notice the difference here. I don't really have to tell it, I don't have to give it context. And so I didn't say use the onboarding SOP or check the missing fields or follow the handoff process, flag onboarding risks. I didn't do anything that I had to use much less context than when I'm using Copilot Chat, and I have to feed it all of the information again. What I might do here is do a quick response. There we go. Alrighty. But yeah, so it already has all the background information. These instructions and knowledge sources are packaged into the agent. It's not necessarily smarter than the Copilot Chat, but it's more focused. it has a job, it has the knowledge, it has boundaries. Okay, and so it does a really good job of actually going through that SOP and pulling off all of that different information. Now, say I left this and left the onboarding agent, and I came back to it a little bit later, and I wanted to find out what information is still missing before kickoff. Now, this is a really, really strong use case because we want consistent review. We don't want every person on the team guessing, what ready for onboarding means kind of thing. We want it the same every single time. And so we want the agent to check against the same expected fields and the same process. All right, now one more prompt here, and then we'll hop back over. And so draft the onboarding next steps email. Again, the value here is like the consistency. We don't have to talk to about it. We don't have to give it, too many details on what we want for tone or, what the email should include, anything like that. It's pulling the information directly from our client onboarding SOP and using that against what information we have and what we're missing. All right, so where was I here? Yeah, so what we want to do is we want to start with something that's really safe, practical, and useful. And so this is like a really great option for this. So we use the agent builder when the work repeats and the agent needs approved knowledge, instructions, and consistent output. Alrighty. Now, if we wanted to take the onboarding process one step further, this is when we can really start to have fun with this. At this point, our onboarding agent is proving really useful. Our team is really enjoying using it. The output is solid. The question starts to become, should this be part of a larger workflow? And that's when Copilot Studio starts to make sense. This is where you go when the process needs action, coordination, connectors, approvals, or governance. So for the Harbour Ridge process, it might look like once the proposal is signed, it's automatically reviewing the documents, automatically identifying missing information. It's creating a planner task for our team. It's requesting approval, tracking progress. So that is, that's different from, simply asking a question. If we had gone to our knowledge agent, and asked it what's missing, it might tell us that the billing contact is missing and then expect us to go and do it. But a Copilot Studio agent could autonomously look for this information. It could create a task for the account manager, notify the onboarding lead, and route it for follow-up. It could even, draft up an email in Outlook and send it for you if you wanted to go that far, kind of thing. So much bigger responsibility, and because it is bigger responsibility, it needs stronger governance, which is why I don't recommend starting with Copilot Studio. It can be very, very powerful, but we need to spend more time on design, testing, ownership, and control. So Copilot summarizes the proposal, Agent Builder prepares onboarding consistently, and then Copilot Studio coordinates the workflow. That's the progression that we're talking about today. All right, now let's talk about where to start. Our first agent should be boring. Nothing too impressive or flashy, definitely not mission critical to start. We want something that's boring. Good first agents, or I guess good agents in general, are repeatable, documented, low risk, frequent, easy to test, owned by somebody, based on clean and clear source material. And we went through a few different examples, like the meeting prep assistant, HR policy helper, that kind of thing. Those are really great first agents because they mostly just involve reading, checking, summarizing, drafting, and preparing. They support us. They don't replace our judgment. They don't make irreversible changes. They don't commit the organization to something that's risky. The best starting point for us here is where mistakes are easy to catch and cheap to fix. Okay, now another useful test, especially as we're kind of getting started here with these agents, as we're looking to the next sessions when we're actually going to be building it, a useful test is Could a new employee understand the process from the source materials? Like if we handed this off to somebody else on the team, would they be able to do it? If the answer is no, the process is likely not ready for an agent. If the process only lives in someone's head, that's not an AI problem. That's more of a documentation problem. As I was building this, leading up to this, I was working on our client onboarding, and then I realized we were referencing our old CRM and that kind of stuff. And so now I need to go to my team, and we have to have a meeting on our what's actually happening in our client onboarding meeting. We're going to run that call on Teams. We're going to record that on Teams. We're going to have Copilot help us with that onboarding procedure. And then we're going to take it and we're going to, move it into Copilot Studio or in the, just a regular agent. Okay. So yeah, just a really great exercise as we're leading up to the next session. All right. Well, we'll wrap this up quickly here. So, before next session, I want you to think about one candidate job. One thing that we can actually tackle during our call next time with our computers open. So bring one boring, repeated task. Ask yourself, what work repeats every week? What source materials already exist? And what should that agent help with? If we can answer those questions, you probably have a pretty good candidate for our first agent here. And so, our next session, the goal is to actually build a scoped, safe, useful assistant that helps with the real work that you're doing every day. And that's how we also start to build trust with our team as we move forward with this. So that's it. Thank you. Happy to answer any questions.
That was great, DJ. Thank you.
Thanks, Cody. Thank you.